Yeah, it's worth noting, of course, it starts in January. According to the Labor Party, that's their plan. They need to get it through the Parliament, but they're also grandfathering existing arrangements. So that's the issue. Do you buy before January 1? So you've got a grandfathered arrangement, which is something we'll talk about in the weeks ahead, Scott. But we just touched on there, Percy wants to borrow. So he wants to borrow for his business. At the moment, you've got a situation, and has for many years, it's starting to loosen up a bit, certainly for residential borrowing. But for business borrowing, a lot of people say to me, it's all right to talk about non-bank lenders and how it's become so much easier with mortgage brokers and the like, but the business lending area, and this is what we're going to talk about here, because there is now there are full banking licenses being issued to a new style of bank enabled by the latest technology. This is increasing the capacity of people to borrow. Judo Capital is one of these. Can we call them neobanks? Is that the name, Scott? We call them neobanks?
Let's get back to basics here, John, and go in very small steps on what we're talking about here. So we've got the big four, and then we've got the other ones that are more regional. But we've got with us Joseph Healy, who's the CEO of Judo Capital. Now, explain to me very simply for me, Joseph, exactly what you've got at the moment and what you'll get in terms of a banking licence. And does that mean that I can then bank with you and then have you as a lender and in part of my small business life?
Yep, thanks. Great question. So Judo Capital is a non-bank lender today, has been for the last 12 months. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, we anticipate becoming a full bank. So we'll change our name to Judo Bank. Judo Bank will specialise in lending money to small to mid-sized businesses only. We won't do consumer lending or large corporate lending. It'll be a specialist banking institution focused only on the needs of small to mid-sized businesses, which we are defining as businesses with a turnover of up to $50 million per annum. Now, I emphasise the term challenger bank because there's a whole lot of a new language that's emerging as the industry, as new entrants enter the industry, from fintechs to neobanks. The idea of a challenger bank is modelled on what we saw emerge in the United Kingdom post the global financial crisis. Challenger banks are focused on taking on the incumbent banks by challenging the status quo based on two formula. The first formula is cutting-edge technology, so it's easy for businesses to do business with us. Secondly, and most importantly, it's based on a human interaction, a relationship-centric proposition, so that when a small business wants to borrow from Judo, you'll speak to somebody, and that person will come and see you, understand your business, understand what you're trying to achieve, and help you solve both your capital requirements and your risk management requirements. So there's a human interface. Now, the reason why I emphasise that is that both fintechs and neobanks are largely technology-driven propositions, and customers will rarely get a chance to see. They may speak to someone, of course they may speak to someone, but they won't necessarily see someone. So in establishing Judo, what we wanted to do was go back to banking as it used to be, banking as it should be, for small to mid-sized businesses. So that they were dealing with someone who sought to understand what they were trying to achieve and solve for that, versus the proposition today where the banking industry has unfortunately become almost dehumanized. There's call centres and algorithms and technology-driven credit decisions, which means a whole range of small businesses that have very viable needs that should be supported by the banking system are not getting what they're looking for. And hence the reason why I and a number of our colleagues established Judo 3 years ago, and next couple of weeks will become a fully licensed bank out there to service the needs of the small to mid-sized business community in Australia.
Okay, Joseph, so I'm going to sort of ask a few questions about that. So firstly, have you got any support from the government? Has the government done anything to support you as a small to medium business lender?
No, well, we've had wonderful support, I should say, from the Victorian state government. I mean, I should say here that several of the sponsors of Judo, senior executives in Judo, were Sydney-based. But when there was a leak in the newspaper about 2.5 years ago that we were going to establish this business, and to their full credit, the Victorian Government Economic Development Agency got straight on to us and said, if you're thinking of doing this, we would love for you to do that in Victoria. And given the way that they reached out and engaged with us and told us how they could help us, not necessarily financially, but just making it easier for us to do business, I take my hat off to them, because we did not get any approach from New South Wales or any other state in the country. And so while it's not federal state support, full support and from the Victorian state government.
Okay, now Joseph, a lot of people when they're going to the bank at the moment are literally cringing. They feel like they've got to give their firstborn up to try and get a loan of $500,000. Now, what makes Judo different? And if I'm a small business turning over $500,000 or Pierce, the previous caller who was about to buy a corner store, what is the process in getting a loan, and do you need all these bank statements? Do you need to know how many times I've gone to Uber Eats? Do you need to know where I'm travelling, etc.? And these are the questions that the major banks are asking. So what makes Judo different?
Well, that's a great question. So if I can just for a second just describe some of the fundamentals of banking. And it's not technical, but it's important. When you're lending money to a small business, or to anybody for that matter, there is what we call the 4 C's of credit. And this is hugely important. The first C is the character, reputation and integrity of the individual. The second C is the cash flow in the business. Is it enough cash flow to service and repay the debt? The third C is the capital. How much equity capital does the owner have invested in the business? And the fourth C is the collateral, the security. Now, the reason why I emphasise this is that the banking system has defaulted to the fourth C. And most small businesses, when they go to the bank, the first question that they get asked is how much is your property worth? And we'll lend you 75% of your home. That can be a huge disincentive to invest in your business if your family home's on the line. What Judo will do is go back to the 4 C's. We'll look at what your business is all about your track record, about how much money, cash flows you've got in the business, and we'll be responsible lenders, but we will not default to saying, how much is your home worth?
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there, Joseph. One last question, please. If I was to get a loan through Judo Capital for my business, what would the ballpark interest rate be at today? Part 1. And part 2 is, do I have to put my house as security if I'm coming to Judo?
Part 1 is the interest rate would be in line with the market. We're pricing ourselves to compete with the major banks. The second answer is that it'll depend on the circumstances of your business.
All right. Look, can I ask you, because was I right when I said earlier, it's John here, was I ask you right when I said earlier that a lot of businesses, they have trouble with the big banks because, we've had this huge change in the banking landscape over the last couple of decades. People like me have gone to non-bank lenders and financed my house a couple of times and got a much better deal. But whenever I've raised it on air, I get people saying, well, that's all right for you. Business has a lot of trouble accessing finance. That's the area you're moving into, isn't it?
Definitely. So let me just give you 2 facts. The first fact is that the total amount of lending to small, mid-sized businesses in Australia today is around about $300 billion, thereabouts. The total amount of lending that is not being provided, that's being demanded but not provided by the banks because of the lack of property, is in the order of $80 billion, $83 billion to be precise. That's about 30%. That's significant. And what we're doing is providing competition to the major banks. And going back to, as I said earlier, banking as it used to be, banking as it should be.
That'd be hard to put together a business like that because you've got to find people that can do that old style, face-to-face, empathic approach, which seems to have gone by the board.
Well, that's the kind of type of people that we've been hiring. We've got 70 or 80 people staying in the offices along here in South Bank. We're opening an office, opened an office in Sydney. We're hiring people who are passionate about small business, who've got deep experience in small business, who are deeply frustrated by the experience that they are able to offer working inside the larger banking institutions that have moved away from providing the kind of service that small businesses need. Small businesses need people to listen and to understand and to provide ideas and solutions.
Listen, we've been talking about this for years. I mean, this is such a common theme of discussions on programs like this and on radio stations like this. Where did all the old-fashioned service go? And that seems to be your business model. So well done. Good luck with it. And we'll keep in touch. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking more.
Great, my pleasure. Thank you.
$80 billion, you're saying, people who are looking for money. That's the amount he mentioned there, $80 billion of unmet demand from businesses. And those businesses get that money, they have a go, and they start growing. Joseph Healy there is the CEO of Judo Capital. They're sponsors of ours at Macquarie Media. And look out for them because they're going to be operating as a full bank and they're targeting small businesses to give them the money that they've been looking for. You might be one of those who's been trying to get finance for your business. Scotty, I think it's a really worthwhile proposition, this, isn't it?
Well, when you talk about the 4 C's from Joseph, the first one was character. Like, that's, you walk into a bank now and you show your financials, they're not looking for your character or your personality or how you conduct yourself. They're looking only at what you've been spending money on and your income that you're earning in your pay slip. So it's a real different shift. But I think as I said, if we approach the federal government in a way that we've got a budget on Tuesday night, and if they want the economy to grow and if they want to see Australia avoid a recession, and in what opinion we may see this year a rate cut from the RBA, which I think will probably be happening in maybe October, November, they've got to stimulate the economy. So they've got to be behind small businesses. And Joseph's in the Judo capital model considers a small business up to $50 million. So I think there'll be a lot of people and a lot of small businesses interested in looking at leveraging towards them.
131873 is the number. It's Let's Talk Business. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back with our Workwise segment. Have we got something for you? Because home office deductions, a lot of people make them. A lot of people in business make these home office deductions. The tax office is reportedly targeting home office deductions. So we've got an expert coming on right now to show you how to negotiate that particular maze here on Let's Talk Business on this Sunday night.